In addition to the waveguide itself, you'll need a connector kit to prepare the waveguide for hoisting. The connector kit contains all the components necessary to make the connector. Here we're using an Andrew Type EW77 waveguide. Andrew can also supply a special flaring tool for the EW77. The tools required for making the waveguide connector include a hacksaw, knives, including a slightly blunt shoe knife or similar flat-bladed knife that's not too sharp, a flat-bladed screwdriver, a file, a small brush, a cloth, a drift, metal cutters, and a hammer. If you use the special tool from Andrew, you won't need the drift, metal cutters, or hammer. The waveguide must be supported while the connector is being constructed, either by a colleague or, as in our case, by fastening it to the tower. Make sure the waveguide is pointing downwards to prevent sawdust entering it when it is cut. Only a straight section of the waveguide must be cut, so inspect the waveguide and straighten it if necessary. Protect the surface of the waveguide, for example by tying a cloth round it. Also create a good working environment for yourself. Open one of the kits containing the installation instructions, read them, and check you have everything you need. If not, contact your engineering department. If everything is in order, begin the installation by cutting the waveguide. This first cut doesn't need to be very precise because a cutting guide is used later to recut the waveguide. Use the small brush to remove any sawdust from inside the waveguide. This is very important because any debris inside the waveguide affects signal quality. Insert a wad of cloth into the waveguide to prevent debris entering it. Do not put it too deep though, you must be able to get it out again. Cut round the jacket of the waveguide at a point 44 mm from the end. Use the slightly blunt shoe knife or similar flat-bladed knife that's not too sharp to do this. A sharp knife would damage the copper and cause a bad connection. Cut the jacket along its length and peel it off while taking care not to damage the copper. Slide the compression ring onto the waveguide, followed by the wide seal. Position the seal immediately after the bare copper. To make this easier, use a little grease on the inside of the seal. Apply a thin coat of grease to the outside of the seal. Pull the flare ring slightly apart and slide it onto the waveguide till it's seated in the corrugations nearest the seal. Slide the compression ring towards and over the flare ring, pressing the two tightly together to ensure a good weatherproof seal. Screw the two rings together. Position the saw guide against the compression ring and fasten it in place. Hold the waveguide firmly in its downward position and cut through it, keeping the hacksaw pressed against the saw guide all the time. Remove all burrs with a file before removing the saw guide. Be careful not to scratch or otherwise damage the corrugations on the inside of the waveguide. Use the edge of the shoe knife to remove all burrs from the inside edge of the waveguide. It's important not to use anything sharp that could damage the copper. After removing all burrs, remove the saw guide. Brush away all debris, including from inside the waveguide. Remove any remaining burrs. As already mentioned, it's very important to keep the waveguide clean, so keep brushing. Use the metal cutters to make snips all round the waveguide edge, about 3 mm apart. Use the drift and the hammer to bend back the snipped edge to form a nice, even flared collar. Make sure the collar doesn't extend beyond the inner groove of the flare ring. Remember to remove the cloth from inside the waveguide before finishing the connector. Place the O-ring seal in the outer groove of the flare ring. Attach the outer part of the compression ring and insert the bolts, each with a spring washer. Tighten the bolts one opposing pair at a time, making sure the gap between the connector halves remains constant. Open the bag and remove the seal for the connector. Clean the inside and outside of the connector with the brush and insert the seal in the groove. Unscrew and remove the air inlet blanking plug. Wrap 4 or 5 layers of Teflon tape round the threads of the air inlet connector in the same direction as the threads. Insert the air inlet connector and tighten it. Before hoisting the waveguide, protect the connection against rain and dust. An ordinary plastic bag will do for this purpose. The waveguide is now ready for hoisting.